at Statistics Canada, now a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Philip. Broadly speaking, you're not saying that Canada should knuckle under to Trump or show signs of deference, but you're saying that retaliatory tariffs might not be the way to go. Start off with that, if you would.
Well, I think we have to have confidence in our product and in our knowledge of economics. So one of the few things economists agree on is the benefits of trade. And in this case, the benefit of trade for Americans is lower prices. I dare Donald Trump to raise the tariffs on energy. Let him explain to the American people at a time when everyone's worried about rekindling inflation why the price of gasoline would go up 40 cents. I dare him to put a 25% tariff on auto parts that cross the border multiple times that would raise the price of vehicles by up to $10,000. Let him explain to the American people why the cost of housing would go up another $10,000 because of tariffs on lumber. So I don't think retaliatory tariffs are the way to go. It's emotionally satisfying. I understand people are upset and angry. But the best way to end this tariff war once and for all is to get Americans to talk to Trump. He's not going to listen to us anyways, but he will listen to the American consumer and the American producer when they come to him and say, the burden of these tariffs is just too high.
I guess it might be politically difficult, mightn't it? I mean, the current Liberal government has been defiant and said we're ready to hit back with our own tariffs. I guess no government wants to appear weak in a situation like this.
No, but on the other hand, we also have to be aware, we're going to be hurting ourselves. Retaliatory tariffs end up ultimately punishing the Canadian consumer and producer. We have to be aware, for example, that here in Ontario, a lot of our oil and gas goes through the U.S. I mean, remember a year or two ago, people were very upset when the governor of Michigan threatened to cut off the pipeline supplying Ontario. That was Canadian oil that goes through the U.S. and then appears here. So if we slap a tariff on the U.S., we're going to end up paying more ourselves. So, a lot of this is, as I say, it's emotionally satisfying, but when you start to sift through it, it's just going to hurt Canadians, and it's not going to. We have to find a strategy that ends this nonsense once and for all. We can't live with this kind of uncertainty over our economy for 4 years. And the best way to do that is to get Americans to pressure Trump. Going down to the White House and saying, please, Donald, don't do this, just makes Donald feel important. It just reinforces his sense that, tariffs are the way to go. It makes people knuckle under.
I mean, we're all armchair critics, but I think some people feel that former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made the wrong move when he went down to Mar-a-Lago to court Trump.
Yeah, and, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I asked, where did this nonsense about the 51st state come from? Because, that wasn't part of the election campaign in the U.S., and I was told that it came up because, Trudeau went down there and said, if you put a 25% tariff on us, it'll destroy the Canadian economy. And that put it in his mind that, okay, if your economy is destroyed, we'll bail you out. We'll take you over. And it's still hard to believe that anybody takes this seriously. But, it's an example of how showing that kind of weakness at the end just invites an escalation on Trump's part. You're certainly not going to get a sympathetic reaction from this guy.
Yeah. One account I read, though, is that this is all Trump's idea. It's not coming from this alleged annexation desire. It's not coming from others in the Republican Party. It seems to be just Trump's thing.
Yeah, and I drive by the U.S. Embassy here in Ottawa all the time, and I often wonder, but they must be telling him, one of the roles of the embassy is to be the eyes and ears on the ground. They must be telling him that this is just fueling an anti-American backlash. If you really did want to annex Canada, this is about the worst way you could possibly think of to go about it. Demonstrate that the U.S. is a successful, proud country, and that's much more likely to have a positive impact on Canadians' view of them. But this is just fueling boycotts and backlash and anti-American sentiment of every type. So if this is the annexation strategy, it's certainly not going to work.
You say that putting some kind of export or restriction, tariff, or even a ban on stuff we sell to the Americans, as Doug Ford in Ontario threatened to do with electricity, or there's been talk of an export tax on oil. You don't think that's the way to go either?
Oh, this Captain Canada posturing. I mean, it's I can understand doing it during election campaigns. But again, as a strategy, as a long-term strategy, and we have to be worried about the long-term impacts of this, it's just disastrous. I mean, you want a reputation, particularly when it comes to energy, when people need to know that the lights are going to be on tomorrow and the next day and the day after. There can't be interruptions of service. You don't want to be the kind of have the relationship of Russia with Europe after their invasion of Ukraine. We want to be known as a reliable, dependable, low-cost supplier of energy. And any threat to that in the long run is going to hurt us. And we have to remember, too, here in Ontario, we import electricity from the States during peak periods as well. And our electricity is not indispensable. This isn't like Quebec's supply to some New England states. These states that we threaten to add tariffs to, they can get their electricity elsewhere. A lot of what they buy is just cheap wind and solar power excess that we dump at next to zero cost anyways. So they're doing us more of a favor by taking our surplus from us than we're doing the reverse. So I think it was a very short-sighted strategy. I think exactly the same goes for oil. As I say, even worse, not only would Americans pay more, but we would end up paying our own tariff because a lot of that oil goes through the U.S. and then it pops up here in Eastern Canada. Remember that big fire at Lac Mégantic? That was American crude headed towards the Montreal refinery. If we start slapping tariffs on oil and gas, we're going to end up paying more ourselves. So I just don't think it's a very good strategy at all.
We are tight for time. We hear a lot of lip service. I think we've heard it for decades about, diversifying into other markets. But we really haven't made much progress on that, selling more to Europe, for example, compared to the US.
On the other hand, though, I mean, we have started to sell our oil into Asian markets, and by all accounts, that's been extremely successful. I think in retrospect, if 10 years ago we had gone ahead with Northern Gateway, and after that, if we had gone ahead with Energy East, and never mind some of the LNG proposals on both coasts, boy, would that look like a really good idea now. So, we're not going to be able to build these projects overnight, but I think there's an important lesson there on diversifying, particularly our oil and gas. Some products we're not going to be able to diversify. Our auto products, there's never going to be an overseas market. But oil and gas, there clearly is. And to avoid a repetition of this kind of nonsense in the future, hindsight is 20/20, but we should have jumped in these opportunities in the past. The opportunities, when they're still there, we should be acting on them with great speed now.
Thank you very much indeed, Philip.
My pleasure. Thank you, Andrew.
Philip Cross, Senior